projects that Chinese companies do for our infrastructure projects or the airport projects or whatever. For instance, they have a joint venture with L&T and they did the tunneling for Delhi Metro, the Dwarka sector. They're also bidding for tunneling again in Chennai. So these are the projects from which the earnings, this is the earning that I mentioned, and the contractual value of projects is $55 billion US, which is quite a good figure. These are some of the major Indian players in China. These are people who have invested, who have their own factories. Mahindras have two factories, both tractor factories. There is one factory they have in a city called Yancheng. This factory was set up, I think it was inaugurated in early 2009, and they have been so successful that they are already amongst the top 5 tractor manufacturers in China. They manufacture the entire range from 25 horsepower to 125 horsepower. They are manufacturing products in China which have no demand in India. And the Mahindra factory is a unique factory in the sense that it is the only assembly line for a tractor manufacturer in China which has such a complex assembly, where the same assembly is producing 25 to 125 horsepower, and they have and the entire workforce is Chinese. They have about, I think, 40 people who are managing their quality control, etc. And in such a short time to come within the first 5 tractor manufacturers in a competitive domestic setting is something which is very commendable for the Mahindras themselves. They have recently inaugurated their machinery plant, the machines they were importing from India or elsewhere. So now they have designed machines for their tractors which cater to the domestic market. A fraction of what they produce they export, but essentially they're producing for the Chinese market. Tatas are present in China with auto component. They have a tea garden from which they're doing tea extracts, which they're going to, it's not taken off as yet. Tata Logistics is there. Jaguar is, of course, Jaguar gets 50% of its profits come from the Chinese market. And I think Jaguar is also planning to set up a factory somewhere near Shanghai. L&T has 4 factories in China. One they acquired when they got one when they acquired a Malaysian company. They're making valves and various things. Not a very large operation, but L&T has a lot of. There is a company called SUCG, Shanghai Urban Construction Group. They have an ongoing agreement with L&T, and they participate together in a lot of infrastructure projects in India, particularly because SUCG has tremendous expertise in tunneling. They're a tunneling expert. LMW, Lakshmi Machine Works, it's a Coimbatore-based company. They set up shop very recently in China. They sell spindles. They sell spindles which Chinese don't make, incredible though it may sound, but these are machines that they are assembling in China. They have a factory in a place called Suzhou, and they already have their orders booked for the next 3-4 years. They've been extremely successful, and because they've brought a product which the Chinese don't make, and their closest competitor are Italians, and the LMW is able to beat the Italians, in terms of cost. Thermax, again, not a very big company. Thermax have set up shop in China. They make chillers. There are many large producers of chillers in China. It's a competitive market, but Thermax has also done very well. They've got good government accounts, and it's a green technology that we brought into China. We're very proud of Thermax's success in China. Suzlon is somewhere in North China. They have not done very well. But they came in with a big presence in the wind energy sector. Binani Cement has a factory in China. They make cement for the domestic market. They're in Qingdao, and I think they are now spreading elsewhere. They are also expanding. There is a company called Sundaram Fastener. It belongs to the TVS group. Sundaram was one of the first investors in China. They are in a city called Jiaxing. They were the first FDI in that little town, and the town leaders were so happy to get an FDI that they named the city Sundaram Street. So there is actually a street in China which is called Sundaram Street, where Sundaram Fasteners have their factory. Sundaram has had a very interesting experience. They started with, they went into China because the wages are low, raw materials available, and cost of production is low. So to take advantage of the cost, they started making fasteners there for the European market. They started exporting to Europe, and within a few months there was anti-dumping duty on China. So Sundaram's dreams were shattered within a few months, but they did not lose hope. They reinvented themselves, and they started making fasteners for mining equipment. And now they sell only in China. They are not exporting anywhere. They are selling to John Deere, to Caterpillar, now to Mahindras. They've discovered, Mahindras and Sundaram have discovered that they have a synergy there. And Sundaram has not only recovered their initial investment, they're making up to 30 to 40% profits from the China market. They are an amazing success story, and they could have easily closed shop after the anti-dumping duty and come back, but they didn't do that. They hung on, and by this innovative thinking, they've been able to be very successful. They've got, every year they get a quality control certificate, and it's very good for Indian companies, because they've established the reputation of Indian companies as companies which you can trust and who can produce very high quality products. So I think it's the quality part of the Indian companies which is really making inroads into the market and into the domestic market, which is really not very easy. There are other companies like Bharat Forge, Micro Ace, another Indian company with an engineering product. They are setting up a factory again in Jiaxing. Wipro's engineering branch has taken up land. They are setting up a factory. Sterlite Group is again a company, Indian company, which was selling optic fibers to China. Decided that rather than sell from here, they have also decided to set up a factory and produce optic fibers in China. There are all IT majors, as I've said, are there. TCS has had quite a bit of success in terms of getting government contracts. They do. Almost all Chinese cities have now come up with smart city projects, which basically means that they're converting their healthcare, their education sector. They're basically going in for online, products in these sectors, and TCS has got a couple of such agreements in some major cities, essentially in the healthcare and education sector. NIIT has over 180 centers where they train in software. NIIT has MOUs with universities, and the software program of many universities is run by NIIT. Infosys has just bought land in Shanghai, and they're building their largest training center outside India in Shanghai. Infosys does a very unique program. They select 100 Chinese university graduates and send them to Mysore for familiarization. There is no bond with these kids. There is no commitment on part of these students that they have to join the Infosys. These are all the top students from Chinese universities who are picked up for a familiarization, and these children then go back and they write their stories, and they all go back with absolutely fascinating experience of what they have learned. And I spoke to Infosys. They say that about 60% of such people join Infosys. 40% don't join, but out of the 40%, almost half of them come back after a few years because of the experience that they have in India. And in fact, they've come out with a little book in Chinese of the account of these students. And Infosys also has not been able to come to terms with the fact that one of these badges scored such high marks that none of the Indian batches have been able to reach that sort of target. So the record of marks is being held by one of these Chinese groups in Infosys Mysore. Infosys has 2,500 employees only in Shanghai, and they have much more outside. A lot of public sector companies are present, like BHEL, BNEL, but most of them are sourcing from China. Chinese investments you saw in the film. Sany you saw. Yap Zoom. This is a company which makes plastic fuel tanks. You saw in the film. Longsheng Kiri is a very interesting company. It's a chemical company. Longsheng is a Chinese company. Kiri is a Gujarat-based chemical company. They have a joint venture, and they have bought up the biggest dye maker in the world, which is a Denmark company called Dystar. So Dystar is now belongs to Longsheng Kiri. Longsheng Kiri is dismantling because the chemical industry is moving from Europe towards Asia, and they have been quick in moving in, taking over companies, and depending upon their strategic decision, they either move the companies to India, China, or Indonesia. Energetic Bulbs. Energetic is the brand name with which a Chinese company is selling bulbs. They have their manufacturing in Gurgaon. I went to the company, the Chinese parent company, and all downstream suppliers, people who make the filament, people who make the glass, people who make the boxes for the bulbs, they all want to come to India to invest here because they feel that the opportunities are here. Shanghai Automotive Company. This is a huge automobile group. They have tie-ups. Volkswagen came to China basically through the SAIC, as they are called. SAIC has taken over GM India. And SAIC has a very successful van in China. They want to bring in that van into the Indian market. So a lot of exciting things are happening in terms of investment. And the prospects in investment seem to be much more, in terms of moving ahead and potential. I must add a few words on IT. On IT, most Indian IT companies are basically catering to their overseas clients from the Chinese market. They feel that they can cater to their Korean and their Japanese clients from China. The penetration into the Chinese market is still much lower than we would ideally want it to be. But there is absolutely huge potential because the IT outsourcing business has not really taken off in China. And here there are perfect synergies between Indian and Chinese companies. So that's an area where there is a lot of potential. And I have not really mentioned the small Indian software companies which are there. There must be about 20-25 of them who have niche products like animation or whatever, and they're all present in China because the market is booming and there are a lot of win-wins for Indian companies there. Again, opportunity China, needless to add, for every market a businessman has to do his own homework. Our own websites, we try to put in as much information as possible, and I encourage people who are wanting to do business in China to check these. We do background checks for Indian companies. So if you have a company with which you want to do business, you want to be sure that this is a genuine company, you can write to any of our consulates, embassies. We do a background check, which basically means we will check whether the company exists or not, whether it is registered or not. Taking the business decision is of course your decision, but we can protect you from malpractices locally. There are plenty of consultants who are in the business of promoting India-China trade and business, so they are always useful. CII and FICCI are present. CII IBF is something which the CII has set up. This is the India Business Forum. The Indian companies in China meet regularly in the form of the India Business Forum, and the Indian companies sit together and discuss what are the issues that face them, what are the problems. In terms of future problems, imposition of social security on foreign companies is really one of the biggest challenges Indian companies are facing at present. Increase in wage, migrant labor is no longer coming to Eastern China, with factories moving away from Eastern China region, South China, towards the central and western regions. there is a shortage of manpower in the traditional industrial belt. That is something which not only Indian companies but all companies have to deal with. So labor shortage, wage increase, social security, these are some of the basic issues companies deal with. Power is a problem. There are power shortages, and Indian companies tell us that when power goes away, they just go and tell the city bosses that we are FDI, we brought in money from abroad, we should not come under the power shortage, and they are usually not under power shortage. So even if Chinese companies have to face power shortage, the system is such that FDI companies do not come under the 9-day rule. They sometimes have that you can run your factory for 7 full days, then you have to give a break of 3 days. This is not imposed on Indian factories often. These are some of the useful websites. Dizan Shira is a consultant, and they promote both Indian investments in China and Chinese investments in India and European investments in India. So they are really focused on the Indian and China market, and we have done some work with Dizan Shira. A tailor-made page is there, not page actually, about a 60-page document is there in the Dizan Shira website, which is only tips to the Indian companies on how to do business in China, on Eastern China particularly, the intellectual property regime, labor regime, your basic precautions that you need to take, where are the SEZs, which are the cities which specialize in what product, if you have pharmaceutical, which is the best place to go to, if you have electronic, where do you go. All this information, as well as information about Indian companies who've been successful, is available on the Dizan Shira website if you look into doing business with Eastern China. So basically, I have tried to, I think I've given a very long presentation, and of course you're welcome to ask questions. Since I have the mic, I want to say a few words about the PD division. This is the Public Diplomacy Division of the Ministry of External Affairs. PD division basically engages not only with people abroad, which is something which we have always done in the MEA, we also want to engage with our academia, people like yourselves, with business, with students, with young people, for a greater understanding of what we do, India's foreign policy. It is also building